I remember the smell before I remember the sound. Wet soil. Rust. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears until you start hearing things that aren't there. My farm sits far from the main road, where headlights rarely pass and help takes too long to arrive. Nights stretch wider out here. Shadows feel heavier. I used to like that silence. I used to think it meant safety. That night, the silence felt like a warning. The wind dragged across the broken fence behind the barn, making a hollow tapping noise that kept pulling my attention away from the paperwork spread across the kitchen table. Bills, letters, notices stamped in red ink that felt louder than any voice. I rubbed my eyes and told myself I would deal with it in the morning. I always told myself that. The porch light flickered once. Then twice. I noticed it but didn't move. Lights out here flicker all the time. Bad wiring. Moisture. Old systems hanging on longer than they should. Still, something about the rhythm made my chest tighten. Not electrical. Not random. Deliberate. I stood up slowly. The chair legs scraped against the floor louder than I expected. Even that sound felt wrong, like I was interrupting something that had already started without me. I walked to the window. The yard looked empty at first. Just the pale wash of the porch light stretching across dirt and weeds. The tractor sat where I left it. The barn doors hung slightly open, swaying with the wind. Normal. Everything normal. Then I saw the truck. Parked beyond the reach of the porch light. Engine off. No headlights. Just a shape where no shape should be. My mouth went dry. I don't get visitors that late. Not anymore. Not since the rumors started. Not since the bank notices began stacking up. People out here hear about trouble and keep their distance. They don't ask questions. They don't offer help. They watch. I felt that watching now. I stepped back from the window, heart pounding against my ribs in sharp, uneven hits. My first thought was theft. Fuel. Equipment. Maybe someone desperate enough to risk getting caught. I told myself that's all it was. I almost believed it. Then the door handle rattled. What? Soft. Testing. The second time was harder. The sound sliced straight through my chest. I froze, staring at the door as if staring could hold it shut. The wood felt thin suddenly. Every lock felt temporary. My hands trembled before I even realized I was moving toward the drawer where I kept the old revolver. I hadn't touched it in years. My fingers fumbled as I pulled it out, the metal colder than I remembered. Heavy. Real. The weight of decisions I didn't want to make. The rattling stopped. Silence again. Worse than the noise. I held my breath and listened. Footsteps outside. Slow. Gravel shifting under weight. More than one person. The porch creaked, that familiar old groan that suddenly sounded like a countdown. A knock came next. Not polite. Not patient. 3 hard strikes that vibrated through the door and into my bones. I didn't answer. The 4th strike wasn't a knock. It was a kick. The frame shuddered, dust drifting from the edges like the house itself was scared. Open up, a voice said. Oh, flat. No urgency. That calm kind of threat that feels more dangerous than shouting. I stayed silent. Another kick. The wood cracked. Time stretched thin. My thoughts scattered. Call the police. Hide. Run. Fight. None of them felt possible. The nearest patrol would take too long. Running meant darkness and open fields. Fighting meant crossing a line I wasn't sure I could come back from. The door splintered on the 3rd kick. 2 men stepped inside like they belonged there. Masked. Gloves. The smell of sweat and gasoline followed them in, thick and suffocating. One carried a flashlight that cut through the dim kitchen like a blade. The other held a shotgun angled casually toward the floor, the casualness making it more terrifying. I raised the revolver before I could think. My hand shook. The man with the shotgun laughed softly when he saw it. Not mocking. Just certain. You won't use that, he said. I didn't answer because I didn't know if he was right. They moved closer. Slow. Confident. The kind of movement that comes from experience, from knowing the outcome before the situation even unfolds. They asked about money. Equipment. Insurance payouts they thought I was hiding. They spoke like they had already judged me guilty of something. Like this was a correction, not a crime. I tried to explain there was nothing left. My voice sounded small even to me. The shotgun lifted slightly. That was when I heard it. A sound from outside that didn't belong to the night. Heavy movement through brush. Branches snapping. The deep, rhythmic huff of breath too large to be a dog, too steady to be random. For a moment, none of us moved. The flashlight beam drifted toward the broken doorway. The air changed. Fear has a smell. Thick. Metallic. I felt it rise in the room like fog. The sound came closer. A low rumble followed. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just present. Instant. The kind of sound that bypasses logic and goes straight to instinct. The man with the shotgun turned fully toward the door. And then he stepped back. I saw it before they did. A massive shape filling the doorway, backlit by the weak porch light. Fur darkened by dirt and scars. Shoulders rolling with slow, deliberate power. Eyes reflecting light in a way that made them look almost human for a split second. The bear stood there, breathing calmly, like he had arrived exactly where he meant to be. I couldn't move. I knew that bear. Not from stories. From memory. Months earlier, during late winter, I had found him trapped near the irrigation ditch. Thin. Limping. A steel snare cutting into his leg so deep I couldn't tell where metal ended and flesh began. He hadn't roared. Hadn't attacked. Just stared at me with exhaustion so heavy it felt like grief. I don't know why I stayed that day. Maybe loneliness recognizes loneliness. I cut the snare. Slowly. Carefully. My hands shaking worse than they were now. He didn't move until the metal fell away. He just watched me, breathing hard like he was deciding whether I was part of the pain or the end of it. Then he walked away. No gratitude. No drama. Just survival continuing. I never expected to see him again. But he stood in my doorway now. Bigger. Stronger. The scar along his leg visible even in the dim light. The men didn't know that history. They only saw danger. The flashlight beam shook violently. The shotgun lifted, the man's confidence evaporating into something raw and primal. His breathing grew loud, ragged, matching the rhythm of his fear. I felt my own fear twist into something else. Not safety. Responsibility. Don't shoot, I whispered, though I wasn't sure who I was talking to. The bear stepped forward once. The floor creaked under his weight. Dust shifted. The sound filled the room like thunder disguised as movement. He wasn't charging. He wasn't even looking directly at them. His attention drifted between all of us, assessing, calm in a way that felt far more dangerous than aggression. The man with the shotgun panicked first. The shot exploded before thought could catch up. The sound shattered everything. The bear reared back, not hit, but startled by the blast that tore into the wall beside him. Wood splintered. The smell of gunpowder flooded the air. My ears rang so loudly I almost didn't hear the growl that followed. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was enough to make both men stumble backward, tripping over furniture as instinct overtook whatever plan they had. One dropped the flashlight. The beam spun across the floor in chaotic circles, turning the scene into fragments of light and shadow. The bear advanced again. Still controlled. Still deliberate. But now there was no mistaking the message. The intruders bolted. No coordination. No dignity. Just survival screaming louder than greed. They crashed through the broken door, scrambling across the porch, stumbling into the darkness they had arrived from. I heard the truck engine struggle to start, tires spinning against gravel before finally catching. Then they were gone. The silence returned, but it felt different now. Charged. Trembling. The aftermath of something that could have ended very differently. The bear remained. Standing in my kitchen like the boundary between wild and human had simply stopped mattering. My revolver slipped from my hand without me noticing. My legs felt weak, not from fear alone, but from the release of it. We looked at each other. I don't pretend to understand what animals think. I don't assign human emotions where they don't belong. But I felt recognition in that moment. Not gratitude. Not affection. Memory. He huffed once, turning his head slightly toward the broken doorway as if confirming the threat was gone. Then his attention returned to me, softer somehow, the tension in his posture easing. I whispered a thank you I knew he couldn't understand. Maybe the words weren't for him. He turned slowly and walked back into the night. No hesitation. No looking back. Just the quiet continuation of a life that had intersected with mine twice, both times at the edge of danger. Investigators arrived hours later. The police lights painted my yard in red and blue that felt surreal against the dirt and broken wood. They asked questions I struggled to answer clearly. Shock has a way of blurring time, rearranging memory into pieces that don't fit neatly together. They found footprints. Shell casings. Tire marks. They also found the bear tracks. That complicated everything. There were questions about liability. About wildlife interference. About whether my story sounded too convenient. A struggling farmer claiming an animal saved him from a crime sounded like desperation dressed as fiction. I saw the doubt in their faces even when they tried to hide it. Public judgment came faster than official conclusions. People talked. Some called it a miracle. Others called it a lie meant to distract from my financial troubles. A few said I had endangered everyone by interacting with wildlife in the first place. Truth rarely travels as fast as speculation. The men were caught days later. Not because of me. Because panic leaves mistakes. Security cameras. Witnesses. Sloppy escape routes. They never mentioned the bear during questioning. Pride maybe. Or disbelief that no one would take it seriously. I watched the news quietly, feeling relief mixed with something heavier. Gratitude complicated by distance. Weeks passed before I saw him again. Early morning fog. The kind that turns the world into soft outlines and muffled sounds. I was repairing the fence when I noticed movement near the tree line. He stood there, partially hidden, watching without approaching. He looked healthy. Strong. Alive in a way that felt like quiet defiance. I didn't move toward him. I didn't call out. We just existed in the same moment for a few seconds that felt strangely complete. Then he disappeared back into the forest, leaving only the faint impression of his presence behind. I never saw him after that. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind drags across the barn and the silence presses against my ears, I think about the fragile lines that separate survival from loss. I think about how memory isn't just something humans carry. It lives in actions, in instincts, in the quiet decisions made without witnesses. People still debate what happened that night. Some believe it,